Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending this first Vibe webinar. Today, we will have the pleasure to listen Alphonse, trainer and consultant in international marketing, trade promotion, and sustainable business development. Alphonse is working for our partner Globally Cool. Alphonse has been providing consulting and training to SMEs abroad in several countries. Today's webinar is about sustainability in the processed food, a very important topic for companies that wish to expand overseas. Alphonse, I leave you the floor.
All right. Thank you, Romeo, for the introduction, and welcome everybody to this webinar. Today, I would like to share with you some insights into what's going on in the European market, in particular regarding sustainability compliance and shared value strategies in the food industry. And this is a changing landscape in which I will highlight some of the recent developments. And as mentioned by Romeo, my name is Alphonse. My family name is Van Duivenbode. I'm one of the managing partners in Globally Cool, and I'm specialized in export promotion, market entry strategy, and social responsibility. I've been working in this area for the last 30 years, and my work took me to more than 50 countries across the globe, including Latin America, Africa, Middle East, and Asia. Globally Cool is an international consulting company in the area of international trade. And we have three pillars in what we do. We consult, we coach, and we connect. And in the area of consulting, we do a lot of market research. We have done thousands of market surveys over the last 20 years. We also work on export marketing strategies, both for individual companies, but also for associations, for sectors, for entire chains. And we develop promotion and branding campaigns. And in particular in digital marketing, we are also very active, digital marketing and e-commerce, in supporting companies with their digital strategies. And in all cases, we have a sustainability component as part of the strategy development. In the pillar of coaching, we do a lot of training and coaching, again, both individual companies, but also what we call business support organizations and trade attachés, for example. And we help organizations to improve their services. And lastly, in the third pillar, where we connect, we help companies in establishing business linkages, and we do so matching suppliers and buyers across the globe. All right, well, today's agenda, I will take you through the rise of sustainability standards, share with you what's going on and what has been going on over the last few decades. We'll zoom in on the trend of companies moving from a focus on compliance to a focus on value creation strategies. Then we look at legislation, especially the EU legislation that is currently coming about, and that will lead towards an emphasis on yet more compliance. And then lastly, make up your mind on where you stand and what needs to be done on your end in order to comply with these recent developments and benefit from it. So first of all, the rise of sustainability standards. Well, here we find a graph where you can clearly see the enormous increase of sustainability standards, especially since the 1990s. And there has been an enormous increase from a few standards up to the 1990s to close to 300 sustainability standards at the moment. And we have reached a point where, well, there are not many more standards added to it. The curve is flattening, but you can see that there has been an enormous development when it comes to sustainability standards. And what is that all about? And how does it come that this focus on sustainability is so strong? Well, I think everybody among us, we all know and we witness climate change. We see the ice melting, increase in floodings, in storms. We see deforestation. We also face in the social area, we still face situations with labor exploitation, child labor, forced labor, and hazardous working conditions across the globe. We see energy bills rising, and this all leads also to increasing mobilization of the public, of the consumers. They go out on the street, they protest. Extinction Rebellion is a big movement in Western Europe. And especially we see the Gen Z being very vocal on sustainability. Also in our company, we notice that whenever we have a vacancy and we get applications for the job, candidates, they approach us. In many cases, their motivation is based on sustainability, and they want to work with a company like ours because our sustainability focus in our work. So this is really something that is very prominent. Now, if we look at the demand for sustainability certification, if we see the underlying factors, we see there are multiple factors. So we have the Gen Z, we have the consumers that increasingly protest, they raise their voice, and they have obviously a demand for more sustainable products. We see businesses respond to that. We see businesses increasingly develop sustainability strategies where sustainability becomes part of their proposition. A third factor is international goals that have been agreed upon, in particular the UN Sustainable Development Goals that have support globally with individual governments implementing those goals in their policies. We also see it in multilateral negotiations with climate summits, where representatives of governments agree on increasing measures in the area of sustainability and fighting climate change. And the last factor is legislation, and we're going to have a look at that. In particular, the European Union is a front runner when it comes to the focus on sustainability and translating that into legislation. Now, if we look at the voluntary sustainability standards, some of the most important, and probably you will recognize several of these, especially in the food industry, we see the Rainforest Alliance being quite well represented in multiple product groups. Obviously, we have the EU organic label. There is fair trade, and increasingly we also see the B Corp certification. Now, these certifications reflected by the label, we can see it a lot also on the packaging, on the consumer packaging, demonstrating to the consumers the compliance with certain standards. And beyond those standards and those labels, on a B2B level, we see important standards like the Amfori BSCI, SMETA, the SEDEX members ethical trade audit, and the ETI, the Ethical Trading Initiative, as being prominent standards when it comes to B2B. And there are many sustainability standards. As I showed you the graph, it's close to 300 altogether. But what we see is that there are many similarities, and new standards often build on other agreements, other standards that have been introduced to the market before. For example, if we look at the Fair Trade Standard, it heavily leans on the conventions of the International Labour Organization. And the same applies to the EU directives on sustainability. These also have a foundation in the ILO conventions. And for example, if we look at SMETA, which is increasingly important in the food industry, the SMETA is heavily relying on the ETI base code. So a lot of standards relate to each other and reference to each other. A development that we see over time is that we see that the specific sustainability standards, for example, fair trade, that has a very strong focus on fair conditions, fair remuneration, fair labor conditions, but also organic. These kind of specific standards are making place for more holistic standards like the B Corp certification. B Corp covers many more dimensions in more detail than, for example, fair trade or organic. Now, if we look at how these standards are reflected in the codes of conduct of retailers, of big parties in the international market, I'll give you a few examples. For example, Ahold Delhaize, the retail group from the Netherlands and Belgium. Ahold Delhaize has its code of conduct, and the code of conduct can be freely downloaded from the website. I have included the link for your reference. And in the code of conduct, you will see the standards of engagement. And for example, here, Ahold Delhaize refers to the standards that are the minimum standards for which they want their suppliers to comply with. It refers to the ILO conventions on the principles and rights at work, the OECD guidelines, and here we are, the BSCI Code of Conduct, the Amfori BSCI Code of Conduct. So this is what they request from their suppliers. So the suppliers should at least comply with the Amfori BSCI Code of Conduct. Another example of Tesco from the UK. Here we see also the Code of Business Conduct is the document that you can find on the Tesco website. And here it says, human rights and ethical trading. To this end, we support our suppliers to comply with the ETI base code. So this is the Ethical Trade Initiative. So we see Ahold Delhaize a focus on Amfori BSCI, and Tesco says, well, we want our suppliers to comply with the ETI base code. And here also it's very clear that what they say is they choose suppliers based on their values as well as price and quality. So it's very much on the values. And then the ETI base code is used as a foundation. So we see two retail groups. Both of them refer to existing voluntary standards and code of conduct. When we look at Nestlé, Nestlé is a company that is actively working on sustainability in the sense of creation of shared values, and we will have a look at that in a while. And here it clearly says the standard goes beyond industry norms. So they go beyond it, over and above. And they really want to exercise a positive impact on people, communities, and the planet as part of our sourcing activities. So it is not reducing a negative impact, but it is generating a positive impact. And then here, the reference, here it also says ILO. So again, as with Ahold Delhaize, reference to the ILO conventions on working conditions, health and safety at the workplace, non-discrimination, child labor, and what have we. And then here, the ETI base code. So again, ETI base code is a reference to Nestlé. Then there are also other organizations, and this is an example of the Greenery, a distributor of fruits and vegetables in the Netherlands. And the Greenery says, okay, companies must at least participate in BSCI, Fair Trade, ETI SMETA, Fair for Life, SETA, or the Rainforest Alliance. So it is either one. So they don't say, well, we insist on this particular standard, but they allow the suppliers to have either one. Also because they acknowledge there are a lot of similarities between these standards, and by and large, it comes down to similar principles. Okay, so that's as far as the developments in sustainability standards are concerned. So we see an increase in sustainability standards. We see a shift from specific to holistic, and we see how big buyers, the retail groups, but also a company like Nestlé refers to these standards in their codes of conduct. Now, I would like to take you to the trend that from compliance, the focus from compliance to value creation strategies. And what we see nowadays is the rise of, for example, the B Corporation, the certification of companies according to the B Corp standard. And the interesting element here of a B Corp is they try to establish what they call business as a force for good. And B Corp certification really characterizes itself as the groups, the companies that certify against the B Corp standard are truly ambassadors and front runners in the area of sustainability. They want to be a force for good. They are also committed to share with other companies how they do business, how sustainability is integrated in their business strategy. Another interesting element to refer to is a book published, I think this was 2 years ago, by Paul Polman and Andrew Winston. And Paul Polman, maybe the name sounds familiar to you. He is the former CEO of Unilever, and he was really a strong advocate of sustainability. And he brought sustainability really in the limelight of the strategy of Unilever. And he came out with a book that focuses on being net positive. So again, it's not a focus on reducing negative impact, but rather generating positive impact. So again, businesses as a force for good, phrased in a different way. This development actually was triggered by Michael Porter. And Michael Porter, you may know Michael Porter as the guru, the management guru from Harvard, who has been guiding many companies in the area of competition, how to compete, how to develop your strategies and outsmarting the competition. But some 10, 12 years ago, he came to the realization that that focus on profit and shareholder value was not the way to go. So he transitioned his entire philosophy away from profit optimization and maximization towards sustainability. And businesses should not create problems, but they should solve the problems. And I would like to share a brief video. I cut the video a little bit. It's from a TED Talk that Michael Porter held some 12 years ago, where he shared his philosophy and his ideas. I cut it back to some 3 to 4 minutes and invite you to have a brief look at it.
I think we're all aware that the world today is full of problems. We've been hearing them today and yesterday and every day for decades. Serious problems, big problems, pressing problems, poor nutrition, access to water, climate change, deforestation, lack of skills, insecurity, not enough food, not enough health care, pollution. There's problem after problem. And I think what really separates this time from any time I can remember in my brief time on Earth is the awareness of these problems. We're all very aware. Why are we having so much trouble dealing with these problems? That's the question I've been struggling with. Coming from my very different perspective, I'm not a social problem guy. I'm a guy that works with business, helps business make money. God forbid. So why are we having so much problem with these social problems? And really, is there any role for business? And if so, what is that role? Now, I think many have seen business as the problem, or at least one of the problems in many of the social challenges we face. Think of the fast food industry, the drug industry, the banking industry. This is a low point in the respect for business. Business is not seen as the solution. It's seen as the problem now. We've been aware of these problems for decades. We have decades of experience with our NGOs and with our government entities, and there's an awkward reality. The awkward reality is we're not making fast enough progress. We're not winning. These problems still seem very daunting and very intractable, and any solutions we're achieving are small solutions. We're making incremental progress. We can't make large-scale impact on these problems. Why is that? Because we don't have the resources. And that's really clear now. And that's clearer now than it's been for decades. There's simply not enough money to deal with any of these problems at scale using the current model. The resources are overwhelmingly generated by business. The question then is, how do we tap into this? The conventional wisdom in economics and the view in business has historically been that actually there's a trade-off between social performance and economic performance. The conventional wisdom has been that business actually makes a profit by causing a social problem. Classic example is pollution. If business pollutes, it makes more money than if it tried to reduce that pollution. Reducing pollution is expensive, therefore businesses don't want to do it. It's profitable to have an unsafe working environment. It's too expensive to have a safe working environment, therefore business makes more money if they don't have a safe working environment. That's been the conventional wisdom. A lot of companies have fallen into that conventional wisdom. They resisted environmental improvement. They resisted workplace improvement. That thinking has led to, I think, much of the behavior that we have come to criticize in business. The deeper we get into these issues, the more we start to understand that actually business profits from solving social problems. That's where the real profit comes. Let's take pollution. We've learned today that actually reducing pollution and emissions is generating profit, saves money. makes the business more productive and efficient. It doesn't waste resources. Having a safer working environment actually and avoiding accidents, it makes the business more profitable because it's a sign of good processes. Accidents are expensive and costly. Issue by issue by issue, we start to learn that actually there's no trade-off between social progress and economic efficiency in any fundamental sense. And the question is, how can we get business thinking to adapt this issue of shared value? This is what I call shared value. Addressing a social issue with a business model. That's shared value. Shared value is capitalism, but it's a higher kind of capitalism. It's capitalism as it was ultimately meant to be, meeting important needs, not incrementally competing for trivial differences in product attributes and market share. Shared value is when we can create social value and economic value simultaneously. It's finding those opportunities that will unleash the greatest possibility we have to actually address these social problems because we can scale. I think if we can get business seeing itself differently, and if we can get others seeing business differently, we can change the world. I know it. I'm seeing it. I'm feeling it. I think we're all aware.
All right. Well, that was Michael Porter and one of his, I think, very inspiring TED Talks. And he did not only inspire me, he also inspired many companies. And one of the companies that he inspired was Nestlé, who happily teamed up with Michael Porter to develop a shared value strategy. Now, if we look at sustainability strategies and the trends, I have this pyramid for you. It starts with defensive. This is what we have seen a lot in the past. Let's say the past 25 years, 30 years, back in the, let's say, early 1990s, when companies were facing the questions about their behavior, about their sustainability, and many of them were defensive. And as Michael Porter also said, it was the companies were not willing to see and to understand and to act in fighting, let's say, the negative impact in terms of sustainability. And they defended their actions. They said, yeah, it's our aim to make a profit. We are here, we exist because we have to make a profit. This changed during the 1990s. I showed you the graph of the sustainability standards. With the emergence of sustainability standards and compliance. And then companies started to, adopt a certain norm, a standard, and said, okay, let's comply with these set of standards. So we have seen that ever since the 1990s. And then with the growing set of sustainability standards, there became the need to manage it. To manage the quality management standard, ISO 9000, then environmental management, ISO 14000. Then we had the private labels, the voluntary sustainability standards with Rainforest Alliance, Fair Trade, Organic. So it became a management issue. And this was all based on the fundamental philosophy of mitigating risk. Okay, let's comply and we mitigate the risk. But ever since, over the last, let's say, 15 years, we have seen companies turning that around. And instead of focusing on mitigating risks, they started to adopt the strategy focus and zooming in on how can we create value with a sustainability strategy. And that is what we have seen ever since. So over the last 15 years, in line with this TED Talk of Michael Porter, the emergence of the creation of shared value. That's the top of the pyramid, the CSV, creation of shared value. This is nowadays where we see also where in the past with the compliance, we have seen a strong focus with companies, okay, showing compliance through the Rainforest Alliance standard, for example. We see it currently with certification against the B Corp standard, using business as a force for good. So this is really top of the pyramid, adopting sustainability at the heart of the business strategy and building a business model around it. So this is what we see in terms of sustainability strategies with the companies. Now, to give you some examples, I started off with the what are the underlying factors that lead to this increased attention on sustainability. Well, the consumer concern was the number one factor. Consumers are increasingly concerned. Now, for example, if we take an example where we link a consumer concern with a business response, we have, for example, this example of the Flower Farm, a brand that brings into the market these kind of how do we call it, spreads, dairy spreads. And here it clearly emphasizes this spread is without palm oil. And why does it communicate that strongly? Because palm oil is associated with deforestation, and deforestation is a consumer concern. So spread without palm oil says, we are doing good. You know, this is against deforestation. So deforestation as an issue, and this is the business response. Okay, a product that is promoting itself by emphasizing it is produced without palm oil, which is a main contributor to deforestation. Another example is this pineapple from Latin America. Here, the first in the tagline, it says the world's first carbon neutral pineapple. So it's only here at the secondary level that it emphasizes the taste, the quality. So the first is it's carbon neutral. Again, consumer concern. A few other examples. Here we see consumer concern. Again, here we see business response with plant protein. So not animal protein, but plant protein, because it's better for the environment and it is better in relation to animal welfare. So we see it in different kind of food products, in grains, in drinks, and also in meat alternatives. Another example is the rise in popularity of the product hemp. So hemp, this is from presentations at the BioFach trade show in Germany. So we see hemp here as an ingredient also in different kind of food products. And here we see an example in drinks based on apricot kernels. So this is again a focus on reducing waste. So even the kernel of apricot, which in itself is toxic, the company has found a formula to eliminate the toxicity, and now is creating drinks from a waste product. So that is a beautiful example of how you can create shared value. Here, another example. This is a famous chocolate brand from the Netherlands, Tony Chocolonely. And Tony Chocolonely is the main benefit it advocates and it promotes is that it is 100% slave-free, meaning no forced labor in the cocoa plantations. So this is their main proposition. And this chocolate is doing amazingly well in the market in the Netherlands and even in Western Europe. Another example, this is from Ecuador, a a company with a brand called Pacari. It has a beautiful assortment of chocolates, and you can see here how it responds to the different standards. So it's organic, it's vegan, and here we see also B Corp certified. This is a typical company that is a strong ambassador of sustainability. So we see how companies respond. They adopt sustainability in their strategy. So no longer defensive, no longer just focusing on compliance, but really turning it into their proposition and also communicating about it. I would like to share an example of Nespresso, how they are transparent in what they do in terms of sustainability, and actually how they also win over consumers' sympathy regarding what they do in terms of sustainability. And this is, I think it's a very strong way of communicating sustainability efforts. It fits on one page. So here it says what it does in the different areas, what are the main themes that they work on, that they try to address: decarbonization, regenerative agriculture, communities, circularity, and collective action. So they have 5 pillars. And for each pillar, they highlight what is their conviction, what do they believe, what is their goal, and how they are going to achieve it. So very strong. It's one overview that is highlighting where the company stands and how it's going to achieve its goals in the sustainability area. And also here we see the different labels that they refer to, the partners that they work with in order to achieve this. Okay, so that was the second part of this presentation, from compliance to shared value strategies. A clear trend that we have seen over the last 15 years, and that will continue. At the same time, we are now witnessing a wave of legislation that is coming forth from the European Green Deal. And this wave of legislation will again put an emphasis on compliance, because companies have to comply with the new legislation. So briefly, to have a look at this, the European Green Deal, well, everybody, I think, has heard about it. Now, what is it all about? It's likely that we don't know all the details, because the European Green Deal is really huge. It is very comprehensive. It has a big number of goals with many sub-goals and different themes. And some of the main elements that characterize the EU Green Deal: number one, the EU should be climate neutral by 2050. And we should, in the EU, decouple, they call it decouple resource use with economic growth. And that means we should emphasize a circular economy, a focus on clean energy, the renewable energy, healthy food systems. So here also more towards organic, people and planet to be emphasized, focus on green industry and biodiversity. Now, these are the main elements of the EU Green Deal. And there are many different elements underneath, and different legislation. We'll have a look at it. And well, the companies that are based in Europe are, of course, directly affected by the legislation. But also suppliers outside of the EU that want to do business or do business already with EU partners will be affected, because the EU-based companies will have to, as part of their due diligence, as part of their, let's say, responsibility in the chain will transpose the requirements that are coming forth from the legislation to their partners. So, okay, the EU Green Deal. So it will have a lot of impact, but over the last year, and especially the last few months, a lot of voices came out and said, well, with the current developments internationally, will the Green Deal be affected? Will it be softened? Will there be an impact on the Green Deal because of, for example, the trade war that was triggered by the US government? This trade war will drive governments in the EU towards choices, policies, stimulation measures to reduce the dependency on the US and to focus on industrial development in Europe. So there may be a conflict with the goals of the Green Deal. So what will this mean in terms of enforcement of the Green Deal and this, let's say, urgency to address the issue of dependency? Another issue, of course, is the war between Russia and Ukraine and the necessity of the European governments to increase their spending on defense. So again, the question is, how will this impact? What is the conflict with the goals of the Green Deal? Because implementation of the Green Deal, investment in renewable energy, in the circular economy, I mean, that also requires enormous investments. So there may be a conflict. However, so far, there has not been, let's say, an immediate impact on, let's say, making the EU Green Deal more flexible or to adjust the goals. So until today, the goals and the measures that are being implemented still stand. We don't know how this will develop in the near future, but so far, the Green Deal is on course and it will continue. That is the expectation there is until today. So what do you have to deal with then in the food industry, whether you're based in Europe or whether you are a supplier from outside? There are three main legal requirements that I would like to highlight. That is EUDR, the Deforestation-Free Regulation. There is the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And there is the CS3D, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. Now, to start with the first one, the EUDR, this one is already in force and it will be effective at the end of this year for large companies and by mid-2026 for SMEs. The Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive is also already in force. It has been adopted, and large companies have to start reporting this year and SMEs in 2027. Now, if we look at the definition, so what is considered as large, that means 50 million euro in turnover, 25 million euro in assets, 250 plus employees. And then the company has to match with 2 out of the 3 criteria. So if 2 of the 3 criteria are met, the company qualifies as large. For SMEs, the data are way smaller. So 8 million euro in turnover, 4 million euro in assets, and 50 employees or more. Now, if you look at those figures for SMEs, then I think it's fair to say that this directive, this legislation, will apply to the overwhelming majority of companies in Europe. So this is going to have a big impact. Then the Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, it's already in force. It will be transposed in national legislation by next year and effective for large companies by 2027. And this directive is really affecting the large companies and not so much the SMEs. And this will be EU-wide legislation, but at the moment, Germany and France already have a similar legislation in place in their countries. Now, if we zoom in a little bit more on these three legal requirements, first of all, the EUDR. The EUDR applies to 7 main commodities that range from cocoa to palm oil, wood, soybeans, beef, coffee, and rubber. So if you are active with one or more of these commodities, then EUDR will apply. What are the main elements of the legislation? Well, first and foremost, traceability, with a requirement to plot the land and to provide geolocation data, a risk assessment to assess that the plots of land are not affected by deforestation, and that the products have been produced according to national legislation. The third element is that there has to be risk mitigation in place in case of non-compliance. The company has to take mitigation actions. And the fourth element is a due diligence statement needs to be generated. The second one, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Well, this means that companies have to report against sustainability reporting requirements that have been laid down, and they have to disclose information on how the company affects people and the environment, and how the company is governed, and in order to address the issues in the area of environment and the social dimension. Now, there are many different what we call ESG factors that are covered in these sustainability reports, and that ranges from climate change and biodiversity and renewable energy, pollution, waste management, to areas in the social dimension related to labor conditions, discrimination, human rights, modern slavery, health and safety at the workplace, and what have we. So these are requirements laid down in sustainability reporting requirements that the companies have to abide to. Now, basically, the EU sustainability reporting standards cover 5 main areas or chapters, if you like, that goes from governance and the sustainability strategy, where the company has to make clear what are the objectives and how the objectives, the sustainability objectives, are integrated in the business strategy and how these are managed, including the responsibilities at board level. 2, identification of risks and opportunity, so sustainability risks and opportunities, and how these are managed. The third element is the targets and the performance. So based on the identification of risks and opportunities, the company has to set targets and to report about the progress made on the ESG topics. And the ESG topics are then related to the identification of the high priority issues in the area of environment, social, and governance. The fourth element is value chain reporting, and that is where the company has to report about sustainability aspects throughout the company's value chain. So it's not only its own operations, but also the operations of the suppliers and the partners in the chain. So this is in particular, where if you are a supplier to the European market, you will be affected because the EU-based company also has to report about your performance. So if you are a supplier outside of the EU, you will also have to do the same and identify risks and opportunities and develop a plan and report about it. So that is where the consequence kicks in, even if you are not a EU-based company. Now, then lastly, the due diligence directive. This says EU companies are responsible for all parts of their supply chain. So the companies have to identify, assess, prevent, mitigate, bring to an end, and even remedy. So it goes beyond advising the supplier, but they are even held responsible for the mitigation, the ending, and the remedy of the negative impacts. Having said that, again, this due diligence directive only applies to larger companies. But as part of the Sustainability Reporting Directive, also SMEs are held responsible for the acts of their suppliers. So indirectly, this will also apply. So then the question is, are we going back to compliance again with this legislation? So we saw the trend from risk mitigation to value creation. We see how businesses respond and how they integrate sustainability in their strategy. But now with this legislation, we will see that there is again a strong emphasis on compliance. So dealing with sustainability in the strategy, absolutely, it will remain and it will even grow in importance. This is where the market is going. And it is the responsibility of companies, as Michael Porter clearly outlined. But with the legislation, the need for compliance with the directives, with the requirements, has become eminent. So it's a mix. So companies have to do both. So, okay, focus on the compliance, but at the same time, make it part of your business strategy. All right, now, with your strategic choices, there are a few. What I see a lot in my engagement with companies, if we discuss their sustainability and we are looking at strategies, I come across a lot of companies that are still struggling and are very reactive. They look at how the market develops, what kind of requirements come their way, and they respond. And the most often heard comment I get from the companies is, oh no, Alfons, again, another requirement. Again, we need to comply. And when does it stop? But that is because they are in the mode of reacting. They are very reactive. So all the time they feel like they are forced to respond to something that's out of their control. They are at, let's say, the first level. Then at the second level, we see companies that are reacting to trends. Okay, so they see the trends, they look what is going on, they respond, and they incorporate gradually, steadily, they incorporate the requirements in their business strategy. They see it coming. They respond because they see the value of it. And then the third one is, these are the leaders. These are the companies that see what is happening, but it's also part of their moral responsibility. And they anticipate change and they want to be a change maker. And they make it part of their unique value proposition. And as part of their strategy, it's not purely focused on profit, on shareholder value, but the focus is on shared value. So this is clearly internalized in the business strategy, and the company is managed that way. So to leaders, sustainability is at the heart of the company. This is really intrinsic motivation. So the question then is, where do you stand? Are you reacting or are you proactive? You see it coming, you make it part of your strategy, and you benefit from being a leader. You're not only creating shared value, but you are a leader and you are a role model, and you generate profits. You run a healthy business that is ready for the future with a commitment to generate shared value, not only to the shareholders, but also to the communities, to the workers, to the environment at large. Now, if you would like to dig a little bit deeper and you would like to identify what are relevant standards and what are relevant actions that you can take, how can you prepare yourself for the trend in the market and for the EU legislation, I have 2 tips for you. So you can understand what importers, what EU-based companies request from their suppliers outside the EU, and also to identify what other suppliers do. 2 tips, 2 resources. One is CBI, the Center for the Promotion of Imports. It is a Netherlands-based organization, which is part of the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And the CBI publishes annually updated market reports, including the sustainability requirements, including sustainability trends, and also it provides tips on how to become more socially responsible, and also tips on how to make the production process greener. So very practical tips. It has special documents also about EUDR, the implications, EUDR, and the technical tools that you can use for collection of geolocation data, for doing the risk assessment, for assessing deforestation status, etc. So that it can be truly a valuable source, especially if you are a supplier to the EU from outside of the EU. All the information is free of charge. You don't even need a password. And then there is ITC Standards Map. This is a platform which covers all the sustainability standards. So the around 300 sustainability standards in this platform. And you will find all the specifics of the standards, all the areas where there is a need to comply, whether it is environment, social, or governance. It also allows you, it has a function to compare different standards. So you can see to what extent differs fair trade from Rainforest Alliance and from ETI, for example. So you get a very good indication of which standard covers what and what is more relevant, which one is more relevant to you. Again, this is also a free source that you can use. So interesting for a deep dive in the various standards, and together with the information of CBI, I think it will really help you to prepare for compliance with all the requirements and the trends in the European market for the food industry. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the webinar. So we covered the sustainability standards. We covered the trend from compliance focus to shared value strategy. We covered again, the legislation leading towards more compliance in the next few years. And we covered some sources that can be helpful for you to determine what future actions you could take and how to stay updated with the developments. Now, if you would like to know more about what we do in Globally Cool, whether it is in the area of consulting, coaching, or connecting, feel free to tune in and connect with us in LinkedIn, in Facebook, Instagram, or visit the website. Thank you for now. It was a pleasure to be with you. Wish you a great day and wish you lots of positive impact from the Vibe event. So all the best to you. Take care and stay tuned.
Thank you very much, Alphonse. It was a brilliant presentation. It gives a very clear understanding of the challenge and the opportunities for sustainability in the processed food sector. I hope that all of you enjoyed this moment, and we will see you tomorrow for the next webinar that will be about the market trend for food in the European Union. Thank you, everybody.